I'll wait till everyone gets in place here. Rock and my wife Diane will start passing around these cards. I'll do a little bit of a preface on the cards. The landowners now have a 10 to 11 year base of work in the community. We've been involved with, I put the bunch beside you on the table there. We now have a 10 or 11 year base of experience in the community working in various situations. Some of them have been laid out this morning with Tom's presentation, with Curtis's presentation. And we felt at one point that there needed to be some consistency, that people weren't understanding their rights when the RVCA came on your property, or when the OSPCA showed up, or when M&R showed up under the Food Safety and Quality Act. And so we decided that we'd design a card, basically business-sized card, that can be kept in your wallet or in your vehicle or house or whatever, that gives you a quick snapshot of what you need to do when one of these agencies arrive at your property. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming today, and I'm glad to see that there are so many who have expressed interest in this particular topic. And so we will, as soon as Diane gets back to the table, we'll start with the presentation. One of the things that just scares the daylights out of people, especially if you don't have a support network, is when you see the OSPCA drive into your yard, your first thought is, what the hang have I done? Why are they here? So just imagine you're sitting down at your kitchen table after breakfast, you're just finishing up, your husband's getting ready to head back out to the barn or whatever, and you see a vehicle drive in, and you say, somebody's here. And the response is going to be, who is it? I don't know, looks like a government agency vehicle. We have had so many cases where that has happened, where unannounced they have arrived in your yard. It could be anyone from Natural Resources, Ag and Food, CFIA, the different environmental groups, Conservation Authority, Municipal Bylaw, OSPCA, Food Inspection Agency, and others. There's a list longer than your arm of agencies who believe they have the right to come onto your land without a warrant. Curtis is dealing with one of them right now with the USPCA that believe they can go onto your property without a warrant. Okay, next slide. So this basically is a snapshot of the card that has just been passed around. So for the next few slides, I'll be dealing with the top half of the card. The bottom half of the card is what to do when they do come with a warrant. So everything is on this slide except for the logo that's in the top right-hand corner of the landowners. So the first thing to do is, as we make people aware of what's going on and educate people what their rights are, one of the things that people have come to realize is it's a good thing to have a support network. Know your local CLA director, or if you're in another part of Ontario, your landowner executive in that area. Let your family and friends know. Like if you have animals on your farm, if you have water on your farm or your property, that you need to let your family and friends know that for some reason or other you may have someone call on you. Talk to your neighbors about it as well too. And if you are involved in the landowners, and we're beginning to see a larger and larger networking of landowners throughout the province, that you can establish a phone chain so that if the USPCA drives into your yard, you pick up the phone, you call your neighbor down the road and say, I've got unwanted visitors, can you come and help be eyes and ears? There's a little spot in your card at the top where you can put in a phone number, That you can use for any phone number you want, whether it's the president of your landowner chapter in your area, whether it's a good friend, whoever it is, have that phone number handy so that you know it right away. Also know that you have access to the police. We have run into situations where the OSPCA have come onto property with the police in tow, and yet the police haven't done their job, which is to protect your rights as much as it is to keep the OSPCA safe. And if you already have a family lawyer, make sure that you have their number or contact information handy as well too. The one thing you have to realize when they first drive into your yard, time is of essence. You need to encourage your neighbors and family to be involved in your support group. Help set up phone chains, help work on Facebook groups. Keep important numbers in hand so that as soon as you need them, they're ready to go. Next slide. Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay, that's the slide I just did. Okay. Make a record. One of the things that we've seen that impacts greatly the results if you end up in front of a tribunal or in court, that if you document everything from the minute they arrive on your property, it goes a long way to ensuring that you can represent yourself or have your lawyer represent you in a positive manner. If you have no documentation of how events unfolded, the timelines, then it becomes very problematic when you get to court in front of the ARCB or whatever board it is you end in front of. So you have, as you can see on the slide, there's lots of ways of documenting what happens. I'll tell you, cell phones with both a camera function and a record function are great because it's something that not too many people know, that you can tape record any conversation that you are part of without getting the other people's permission. If two people are standing over in the corner and you can hear their conversation, you cannot tape them. But if you're involved in the conversation, you can tape it without getting permission. So audio, check your phone's capabilities. They're a great tool. Handwritten notes, make sure they're legible. There's nothing like appearing in front of court trying to refer to your notes and not being able to read them. Keep things as organized as possible so that you have everything in place if you have to present to a lawyer or if you're going to defend yourself. When an agency shows up, get their names and contact information. Especially in the case of the police, get the senior officer. If it's OSPCA, they are also ranked according to seniority. Get the senior officer or the officer in charge of the site. And make sure that you create a timeline. Dates and times are very important. A case I'll use as an example is a case I've been dealing with for about 2 years now. And I'll preface these comments by saying I am not a lawyer. I am just a CLA person who's been involved in some different activities, and we have drawn from our pool of knowledge that we have gained in these various activities that we have been dealing with. There was a case down in Eastern Ontario, Alfred Plantagenet area. A chap is a construction guy. He moves houses for a living. He does siding as well. And he had the unfortunate happening of the bylaw people in his municipality decided that they were going to make everyone in that municipality have pristine yards. and he was one of the ones targeted. And he has 3 or 4 different properties where if he's moving a house, he moves the house onto one of his properties. Then when he has the land set up, he'll move the house to the property where it was going to go. And so on this one particular property, he had 3 pieces of a house, a fairly substantial 2-story house, plus he had a lot of his material that he uses in moving the structures. The bylaw indicated that his yard was a mess. Now I'll give you a picture of the yard. The frontage is between about 1.5 acres to 2 acres on the roadside, so up to about 300 feet. And it's about 4 acres, 4+ acres deep. There's a row of trees across the middle. They're low shrubs. You can't see through them. All the building materials were at the back of the property. The only way you can see the building materials is from the 2 neighbors on either side. And that's if they go to the back of their property. They claimed that they had an anonymous complaint that they didn't like how clean his yard was. And so they moved in and gave him notice that he was to clean his yard. And he said, well, it's all stuff I use. And it was all in neat piles and everything. And they insisted. And so they ended up calling him one night at 8:30 saying that we're going to come onto your property and remove what we discern to be junk. So promptly for the next 2 days, they spent cleaning his property. He ended up with a $7,500 bill for them to do this, and we know that there's likely in the neighborhood of 50 to 60 people in that municipality who had the same thing happen to them. And right now, Terry is handling his case, and it'll be going through the courts hopefully sometime in the near future. But these are the types of things that you have to be careful of. What you may deem to be neat in your yard may not be what someone else deems to be neat. And the bylaw officers are all too happy to put aside what the Planning Act and what the Clean Yard Act have to say and just take it unto themselves to clean your yard. So again, I'll reiterate, timelines are very important, and names and contact information of any of these agencies are very important as well. Now, next slide. One of the main things with dealing with any of these agencies is not to go off the top. Be politely assertive, not aggressive. So in your left-hand column, you have the be assertive column, and these are the different things you can do to make it clear to whichever agency it is that's coming onto your property that you know your rights. Don't get flustered. Talk to the person in charge, and I'll keep reiterating that through the talk today, but do not tell anything to them. Say as little as possible, and knowing your rights will give you a confidence that you may not necessarily feel at that particular time. Your demeanor is very important. Make it very clear by your actions that you know your rights, whether it's the police or agencies you are dealing with. Next slide. Now, in some of the cases that the landowners dealt with over the years, the agency will come onto your property and pretend that they're your long-lost buddy. Not necessarily. They may wish that you were their long-lost buddy, but for the most part, be friendly, but be firm. Friends do not, and there's a long list on there that you can read about different things that friends don't do. on your private property. And I'll give you a case as an example for this. Mark Tyson, who is the host in the other room, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of his case about killing a pig, and he was involved with the MNR and the Food Safety and Quality Act. They raided him without a warrant. They came on with, I believe it was 2 cop cars and 3 MNR vehicles. There were people left, right, and center, and it caught him completely by surprise. He was doing something that generations of farm people or rural people have done since 1534 when Cartier landed, and that is providing food for himself. In his case, he didn't realize that he had the right to zip it. So when they asked him to provide a statement and they asked him questions, he said, sure. He told them the truth. He gave them a statement, not realizing that everything he said was going to be used against him. And from then, they charged him with 4 different charges. 2 years after that, they withdrew the charges in court because they had nothing to stand on. The important thing to take from that is if Mark had have known his rights, because they didn't have a warrant, he could have said, when they came and knocked on the door, he could have said, no warrant, you've got to go. Get a warrant, and you can come back and you'll talk to my lawyer. Next slide. Now, these are the things that Friends do. And this is what we've seen in the landowners as we've built up more and more of a base of reacting and being proactive in different situations, that Friends do respect your authority over your castle. And as we've grown in the landowners over the last 10 or 11 years, we realize that there are other people who do support our rights in protecting our property. And there have been cases like Alfred Plantagenet's about an hour drive from my place. There have been places where other landowners have driven 5-6 hours to go and help people in Ontario that are being bullied and other things by these agencies. And the one thing for sure that Friends do is they won't go on your property unless they ask you if they can go on your property. So again, I'll reiterate. With Friends, it's important to help establish a phone chain and a support network. A support network is very important. Have a plan set out in case some agency does decide to overstep their powers and your rights, whether constitutional or property. Next slide. So you have an agency show up your door. So initially, the very first thing to remember is don't make any statements and don't sign anything. Put your action plan in place, call whoever you need to call, and then you start determining the basics, the basic things that we learned back in grade school, the 5 W's and how. If you follow through those steps of the 5 W's and how, that will give you all the documentation you will need to appear in front of any agency or tribunal or in front of the court of law.